That's good. Okay, I think I gave a talk on the River Otter project back in the first conference, 2012. So that was based on a survey I did in 2008. And I'm still in the process of resurveying, so I wanted to do something a decade after the 2008 survey, which is now. But I do have enough data to give you some interesting information. By the way, this is a photo by Robert Sendlein. I think that's how you pronounce his name. This is the first known photograph of a wild otter on Long Island, alive. Barbara Connolly, I think, has the first photo of a dead otter on Long Island. And this is at St. John's Pond in Cold Spring Harbor. Okay, so this is the results of my 2008 survey. And one of the interesting things about this is that there's two distinct areas that are occupied, the north shore of Nassau County and western Suffolk. So these are latrine sites based in the Shoe Swamp area, Cold Spring Harbor, and along the Nissaquag River watershed. And then there's another cluster of latrine sites out on the east end, and a pretty widely separated area between them. And that's a couple of latrines at Cedar Point County Park, that area in East Hampton, Mishomic Preserve on Shelter Island, and an area just west of Greenport called the Arshomomic Preserve. And it's possible that these latrines are, because river otters have a large home range, that could be just one otter. It's hard to tell. Whereas this area right here had the largest latrine sites on all of Long Island. A huge latrine site at Upper Francis Pond in 2008. Okay, now, some of you, there's a lot of you out there that have helped me out with this, which is much appreciated. Sending in sightings and photographs. And you might be surprised that I'm not listing the Peconic River, where I found a very small latrine on the Little River Dam and in 2008, and a very small latrine in the Forge River watershed that I think the woman named Lorraine from Wertheim Refuge notified me about. She actually saw the otter run across the road and said to herself, "There's no otter on Long Island. I must be seeing things." And then she found out about this survey. Anyway, neither one of these sites were used afterwards, so there was a one-shot deal. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is distinguish between transients, in other words, otters that are dispersing, looking for suitable areas to set up a home range, and established river populations. And it's a little tricky, but what I'm going with is evidence of regularly used and maintained otter latrines. They're also called scent stations. So there's a couple of ways you can survey for otters, and a lot of people use, track surveys. Uh-oh, that's forward, I guess. Nope. Okay. There we go. All right, so that's forward. Yeah, a lot of places use track surveys, and that's really not suitable for Long Island because we don't get a lot of snow cover. Sightings, forget it. They're very nocturnal, and I felt it was most appropriate to use latrines. And that's also, again, because Long Island is being recolonized. So latrines, I think, give me the best evidence of an actual established home range. Okay. What is a latrine? It's where they leave. This is the most obvious sign they leave is their scat. And this is real fresh scat. It's fish scales and fish bones, occasionally crab or crayfish. And it's a very liquidy greenish color when it's very fresh. So this is about 12 hours, 20 hours old. And then as it weathers, you lose all the, it turns a grayish color eventually as it dries out, and then you just get the white fish scales. And some latrine sites, this will be evident a month later. And then there are different places you can look for latrines. So this is another thing that helps me out because I can say, well, I've had sightings and there was a roadkill here, and I can look at a topographic map or an aerial photograph, and I can pick out exactly where I want to survey, take the guesswork out of it. So points of land, small islands, obstructions where they have to get out of the water, the shortest overland route between two waterways. This is a pond here that I paddled up to. The latrines are also very close to the water, within 5 meters, usually within 2 or 3 meters of the edge of the water. And there's water you can see in the background here. So this is a long peninsula, and they're actually coming out, leaving their sign here, and going in the water. They're crossing over instead of swimming all the way around the point. So this is the distribution of otters. So collecting the latrine sites, this is what I came up with for 2008. And looking at this distribution, you wonder, where these populations came from. It's no surprise that they're on the North Shore because this is the source of otters, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Westchester. One of the things that you might be surprised is that, river otters are great swimmers. They can swim 7 miles an hour. So to cross Long Island Sound at any point would be quite an easy trip for them, 3 or 4 hours. But they have a predisposition not to make open water crossings. They tend to be most successful fishing close to shore and shallow water. So when the juveniles disperse, they move along the shoreline, and this is their closest point where they'll cross over to Long Island. So right here. And apparently, according to Chris Nagy, a colleague of mine that's doing a lot of work on coyotes, river otters, there's a lot of river otter sign in Pelham Bay Park. So this is the first latrine site right here. But these are areas where they can cross. Now, where did these guys come from? Did they disperse all the way along and not colonize any of this area? So I had a question about using the Fisher's Island, Gull Island, Plum Island archipelago to get over here. And looking through the literature, and this was based on Alaskan studies, coastal Alaska, the maximum open water crossing, they've got radio telemetry individuals, was 4 miles. And the Fisher's Island to Little Gull Island crossing is a little over that, but within it, that's conceivable. So I looked at this and I contacted the Fisher's Island Conservancy. Here's the major latrine sites that are close to furthest out on the east end. And I scoured this area, but I couldn't find any sign. There's some really good habitat for otter latrines there, but I couldn't find anything. So I got funding from the Fisher's Island Conservancy and went out there with some colleagues from Martha's Vineyard. We were studying otters, and we spent 3 days. We basically found, remember I mentioned islands where you're going to cross between the shortest distance between two ponds, right here between here and Fisher's Island Sound. I mean, basically, every place that we thought there might be a latrine, there was a latrine. So every freshwater pond and every tidewater pond was occupied by otters. It's, 4 square miles, they had 23 latrines, and I only had 23 latrines. I only had 24 latrines on all of Long Island. So this is maxed out with river otters. And we also found evidence of coyote all over the island, which was quite a surprise. And talking to some of the locals, beaver had made it over to Fisher's Island a number of times. And in 2003, I found out that the biologists working on Plum Island found beaver cuttings. They never found the beaver. And lo and behold, in 2006, a dam was constructed and a lodge built in East Hampton in that otter territory. And the otter and the beaver have a really cool symbiotic relationship that I don't have time to get into, but they just love to, otters really like to gravitate towards beaver ponds because they've got, it's like a mini mart for them. They've got all these slow-moving fish, warm water fish that have colonized the beaver pond. So this is what I came up with so far. This is 2008, and this area here has doubled in size with the new latrines that I found. And ditto for this. It's basically the amount of territory on Long Island that's occupied by river otters has doubled. So I haven't checked this area yet, and I've only checked a few places on the South Shore. It appears that they still haven't colonized the South Shore, which has a lot of good habitat. I'm going to be really surprised if I don't find river otter sign on the North Fork in this area. And Lake Ronkonkoma right here, I actually did find a latrine there 3 years ago. It's not being reused, and that's a whole nother story that I'll get into in a bit. But pretty amazing that river otters, one of the things I've learned from doing this is their ability to coexist in a very fragmented, fairly urbanized landscape is pretty amazing. And a lot of it has to do with their very nocturnal activity patterns. So some cool things since 2008. A really cold winter about 3 years ago. Snow drifted into this cattail marsh. It's about 4 feet deep. And this is some otter scat right here, otter tracks. And what do? They tunnel in. Their number one favorite den site are abandoned beaver lodges. We don't have them on Long Island. They made a little snow cave in the cattails here, in the snowdrift. Evidence of breeding. This is in Laddington. This was, let's see, July of 2015. So this is a 4 to 5 month old, barely weaned juvenile. And in case you don't know, the otter pups stay with their mom for about 10 months, 10 to 12 months. It's a long period of parental care, just with the mom. Why? Because they get themselves in a lot of trouble. This guy decided to go check out a reflecting pool in someone's backyard. Got in, couldn't get out. Mom couldn't help him out, and he was found exhausted, sleeping on the step in the concrete reflecting pool. This is a 24-inch diameter fishing net. The guy scooped it out, dumped it on the grass, and it ran off to find mom. So, yeah. Whoops. And this is a little bit older. This guy's probably about 8 months old. In November of 2015, he and his mom and apparently 2 siblings took a liking to koi. So they got themselves in trouble with the guy that has the koi pond. And he didn't really know what was getting his koi. But he hired a nuisance trapper, a licensed nuisance trapper. And first night he caught an opossum. The second night he caught a cottontail rabbit. Third night he caught a raccoon. Well, there's one raccoon, there's probably more, so he set the trap again and he caught this young otter pup. And that's a 12-inch by 12-inch by 24-inch deep trap. And he made a little video of releasing it. Pretty cool. Let's see. And this little guy was caught the following year in September, so he's 6 or 7 months old. There's a kind of a fishy story about this one, but anyway, it was released in the Connecticut River, in Connecticut River State Park. I'm going to guess that this guy was caught in the koi pond, and the owner didn't want to release him in his backyard again, so he took him to Connecticut State Park. But by the way, if they made it to Lake Ronkonkoma, to get to Connecticut, the headwaters of the Connecticut is a really close trip, and once they're there, they're in the south, on the South Shore. So that I expect to see them on the South Shore within the next couple of years. This is a photograph at Lake Marion, and this otter has an eel. This is a new site. Carolyn Bunn took this photo. It's a little curious, almost looks like some kind of a tag on its ear. If anyone knows anything about that, I'd be curious to hear about that. So there's lots of interesting things. I started out doing a survey, but now I did a camera trap study, and I have collected scat to look at how their diet changes over the seasons, their use of freshwater versus estuarine habitat. What are the Long Island otters using as den sites? One study out west found that a single otter has 80 to 90 dens they use. These are resting sites, not where they have young. These are just not, daytime resting sites. So what are they using here? Because it would be different than they're using in more wild areas. And then it's apparently quite easy to trap the pups. It would be interesting to look at how they're dispersing and how they're colonizing unoccupied areas in a very developed landscape like we have here. And you really have to do that with a radio transmitter study. So I'm interested in seeing if we can't collaborate with the DEC and perhaps Stony Brook or someone at ESF Syracuse and look at some of those questions. It's kind of a neat opportunity. And I think that's it. Yeah. So I know there's a lot of you here that helped me out. John Turner with sightings and things. Eric Powers, Erin Gettler, who I'm not sure, I haven't seen her today, but she's giving a presentation tomorrow. And Callie Velmaco's actually, I know she was giving a program earlier. She's probably the best person on Long Island in terms of identifying otter track and sign. So that's it. Thanks.